areas that are still on septic tanks. To provide services outside of the city limits would inhibit our ability to deal with the issues we have within the city. If we have any reasons to extend them, then I feel we should be annexing that property into the city limits. So at this time, I feel it's important that we pass a resolution to prohibit any further extensions of water and sewer beyond the city limits in hopes that it will enable us to better deal with the issues inside the city.
I guess my only question is, and the way I'm reading this, is that the city will not extend any funds to extend water and sewer. Does not prevent private individuals from paying the city to extend water or sewer.
Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Well, it directs the City Public Works Department, so I don't know how we would extend city water or sewer without the Public Works Department doing it.
It says not to extend funds, but if some private individual or business, we have some businesses outside or inside the city limits. I don't know whether everything's watered now. There was a motel that didn't have water on 62 East.
I don't know.
I think there's some places on the side that doesn't have water, but that's still inside the city. But if somebody had the money and willing to pay for it, is what I'm saying. Because it's no burden on the city at that point.
Well,
I mean, I'm a little confused the way this is read.
I would stay with my position of not extending water and sewer beyond the corporate limits of the city. It does cost through wear and tear, load on the sewer plant. We should be, our directive is to the citizens of Eureka Springs, and these are our resources that are paid for with taxpayer dollars. And to extend them outside of the corporate limits lessens our ability to deal with those issues inside the cities.
Well, I'm still confused because I think we already extend to some outside the city, and those people actually pay a premium. They don't pay the same rates that we pay. They're paying a higher rate, 2 or 3 times the rate that we're paying. So actually we're getting money back when it's extended. It's just, my concern is, using the public funds is what you're saying, but I think the way this is read, it's just saying that if that's what your intent is, I feel that this just says, and I don't know, I guess defer to the city attorney, that just we can't pay for it.
Well, based on what I've heard and the concerns, looks like to me if you took out tonight, expend any funds, and it would read City Public Works Department to not further extend water and sewer services, and leave the funding part out of it would cover the whole thing. They just, whether somebody had enough money to do it or not.
Yes.
Same. If you took out.
Mr. Berry, did you and Mr. Weaver make a rendered opinion on that?
To address Mr. Parnell's comment first, to do what you're doing there, where you're removing those words, you would be directing the actual duties of the public works, which may be beyond this authority of this table. You are the budgetary authority for the city, and therefore cutting off the spending of funds is within your realm. But to direct them to actually how to operate may be beyond. That would be getting into an executive decision-making process. But yes, this is written so that it would prevent the spending of city funds and Mr. DeVito may be correct in that the use of the lines and tapping into the lines would be an expense that the city could not bear. And so this could be interpreted to prevent someone else potentially from expending their funds to join on to the city, because it would put a greater burden on the city's current infrastructure and thereby wear out our system at a quicker rate, or cause a greater confluence of sewage to go through the treatment facility, causing the treatment facility to have to increase its expense. And so it could be interpreted both ways. But it's really written more to stop the city from being burdened with money being directly outlaid for laying lines and digging ditches and that type of thing. It can be more clearly worded if you wanted to actually prevent someone else from building a system and asking to tie in, if that's really the directive. But the whereas clause talks about providing, or it's removing the ability of the city to extend these services to the citizens that are already within the corporate limits. So those funds are needing to be spent to put in sewage lines where we don't currently have them, and to tie in any individuals who are not currently available to city water. The language also, the further extend language in the last part of it is there because we do have at least water customers that are outside the city limits. Kind of mash that together with several issues, and I'll try to be clearer if you don't understand exactly what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Raphael.
It seems like it's a resolution, not an ordinance. The line item for extending any lines or doing any line work, we're already at 120, 130% of that, so the city's not going to have a lot of money to pour into extending water lines. And there are rules about coming in and hooking up to an existing municipal water line. You can't do that without permission. So there's always going to be the odd case that comes up, and we're going to have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. This is just to be a guideline.
Any further?
I move that we assign a number and approve as read.
Second.
What's for a resolution? Adopting it, putting the number in. I mean, a roll call, sorry.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Pownell?
Yes.
Ms. Ballance?
Yes.
Mr. Raphael?
Yes.
Dr. Kirkpatrick?
Yes.
It will be Resolution 588.
Thank you.
Is that motion to read this also?
That does it.
Did you say sign in?
Assign a number and approve as read.
Or approve?
Approve as read.
Did you want it to be read and approved? I mean, sign number and approved?
Just assign number and approved as read.
Okay.
And approve is read. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on.
You're up.
Number 9 is up. 20 Commission Ordinance Review. Mr. Berry and Mr. DeVito. We postponed that, did we not?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Number 10, Mr. Rivas, research on options for access to city property, Rock House Cave. Ms. Ballance and Mr. Raphael.
Move to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open.
Since the last meeting, I went back and reviewed some of the material that has been presented over the last few years in regard to this property. As was pointed out, I guess, at the last council meeting, technically this land is not completely locked off, but the actual access, and from the material I was able to look at from previous discussions in the matter, to try to obtain access from the public right away from the street, basically, would be very difficult to obtain direct access. If it could even be done, it would be definitely not in compliance, unless it was by elevator probably, with the American with Disabilities Act. So if you really want to provide access, you're going to either have to negotiate with one of the adjoining landowners to come up with a purchase or lease of some private property, or the alternative is, if you really believe it's for public purpose, would be to seek to condemn a piece of property nearby from one of the adjoining landowners and use that to build an access that would be more in compliance with the American disabilities. The success of that would be probably that you could force a condemnation if you so desired, but that would probably end up in a suit in which the landowner's property value would be determined by a jury, and then the city would have to consider whether it was truly worth the cost.
What if we pursued a more amicable solution that's requesting if they would grant an easement for access?
That's what was talked about previous, but then that was the issue that was brought up at the time of whether the landowner could restrict that access and how he could do that. That was in negotiation at that time. And to open it and then restrict it for his personal business purposes could place the city in a precarious position of being favoring one over another.
Would you repeat that, please?
The negotiation or the discussion that took place a few years ago was that the landowner would allow access through his property if he had the right to restrict it at certain times for his business purposes. That could be arguably seen as the city furthering or fostering his personal business, and therefore could come under scrutiny by a court if we were to do that, unless the negotiations were to not allow that limitation.
So, if I understand correctly, what the city's already done is given him something that we haven't given everybody. So that, what you're saying is that already stands. Do I understand correctly? We've already done something we probably shouldn't have done. Is that what you're saying?
No, we have not given anybody anything. We are restricted by the position of the property out there in the way it exists. We've not granted anyone the right to close access at their will. They have the right to possess their own land.
Another question. You mentioned ADA accessibility. And that seems odd to me because, as we know, the Parks Department is thinking about putting a structure in Basin Park that cannot be made ADA accessible. So there's a discrepancy there. What are you saying there? I'm not understanding.
I'm not telling you that you could not grant or could not build access that was not ADA compliant, but it would have to be with that consideration if you chose to create the access through the existing adjoining property that is controlled by the city.
So that's really not an issue.
It is an issue because
it's an issue in one instance and it's not in another?
It would have to meet with clearance. would not have it. Could not. It's not that it cannot be done. It's that it would make a more difficult position.
Mr. Pine.
Is the is the issue you're referring to is when it was addressed before planning as far as the improvements that have been done, and he wanted to be able to close it off during weddings and specific times versus a set time of closing? Is that the issue?
That was the issue.
To me, the trade-off for an easement with the agreeability of being able to close it at specific times for wedding situations, to be able to access the site would be, to me, a great move in the right direction versus just slamming the door in everybody's face.
Sorry.
I don't think that's accessible anyway, from an ADA standpoint, unless you go all the way toward Benton Street. And even then, I don't think it's feasible. In fact, I know it's not.
I don't think it would even have to be. It's pre-existing.
There's no way to get up those steps or down those steps or to that location without going up or down or over some bluffs unless they've done something in the last 40 years that I'm not aware of. So I think the ADA is it goes back to what Mr. Pinell's talking about, the access, and I'm not sure, I don't remember the stair. Was it from the stairs? Was that the access?
It was because of the stairs.
No, is that where the access was coming from?
Off of that in the back, if I remember right.
And that's not ADA accessible anyway.
The proposal at that time wasn't, no.
Anybody else? Okay, nothing else? We will move on. We're into new business now. First item under new business is Ray Dotson Samuel John franchise application.
Move to discuss.
Second.
Made and seconded. Floor is open for discussion.
I address the question to the city clerk.
Yes.
Is the application complete?
Actually, I think there are some missing. When I read the ordinance, I see that specific pickup and drop-off points have to be listed. That was the most glaring one. Did you get a copy in your box there, James?
Yeah.
There is some vagueness, but it's not. I would prefer that the council address specifics such as, does 7 days a week qualify as a list of business hours? Does up to $30 qualify as a schedule of rates? Because really, what does that mean? What time length, what distance? He does have point of departure listed in Dairy Hollow. There's not an address listed. It's really not clear to me how one point of departure in Dairy Hollow could cover the whole route, but at this point I would be glad if council would deal with these issues, because I've done the best I can to help the application be complete, and I'm ready for you folks to deal with it. My understanding is that, he has to have permission for pickup and drop-off points off the highway, and there aren't any written agreements from anyone for specific points, but I don't know.
Is the drop-off and pickup points, is that part of the application? I'm not seeing anything.
It's in the ordinance.
It's in the ordinance? It's not in the application form, though?
Number 5.
Points of departure, termination, boarding,
Okay.
disembarking.
Gotcha.
And if you look through the application, Mr. Dotson did number the correlating documents as he trying to see a number 5. Oh yeah, number 5, the only thing listed is on the map. And it just says departure Barbara Dix that I see. So
Y'all should have a letter in your paperwork from Ms. Dix. I think you sent it all in the email to everybody.
I have a copy of that if anybody needs it, and also a copy of the chief's letter.
Does this route overlap any other routes?
Primarily on 23. I might have the map of the other route. Actually, Southern Pride does have some of Grand Avenue, Dairy Hollow Road, definitely some on 23. Those are the most glaring ones that I see. I'm happy to pass this down if you would like to compare.
Just kind
I may have missed it, but I'm assuming where there are no blue marks and it's 23 or 62, that's part of the route. Is that correct?
Blue is the map that Mr. Dotson created for his route.
And we shouldn't even be looking at ISK Road then, because that's not even within the city limits. Unless I'm mistaken.
I believe that is in the county. I'm sure it's in the county. And how to get from one place to the other is not clear to me, but
That's why I asked if the black mark is representing no blue, because it's in the public 62 and 23. Which can tell us a whole lot.
I'm sorry, Mr. DeVito.
The application, to my understanding, is for the third franchise.
no, it's for an entirely new route.
Well, that would be contrary to our ordinances establishing the 3 franchises that are available. And the issue before us is not to create another route, but to approve an application for an animal-drawn vehicle franchise. As per the header on here is application for animal-drawn vehicle franchise. So it's my understanding that we have the ability to approve or deny an application for the 3rd franchise, which is, to my understanding, the Mill Hollow route.
Yes, sir. Doc,
Excuse me. He's trying to point out a new route, and we haven't approved the new route. How can we approve the franchise application?
that's
Okay, we can do it.
that's what you're here for. Decide if you can or can't.
I don't.
Will or won't.
Well, that was going to be my question. Mr. DeVito referred to the Mill Hollow route. Is there already, which I can't find, any pre-approved 3 routes that we're basing our application other than what's being submitted by the applicant? Because technically all we're controlling is the number of franchises, which is 3, and then the route is pre-approved by the chief of police and council, and I don't see that. If that's what we're supposed to be doing tonight, that's one thing. If we're trying to be acting on the application, that's another. And I think, pardon the pun, we've got the cart before the horse again.
The route specifications are not part of the ordinance. That was formulated sometime way before most of us came here.
Did you get that?
Excuse me?
3 specific routes are not part of the ordinance.
That's what I'm
They
saying.
were
That's
agreed
what I
upon
was asking,
by-
clarifying. That the ordinance only states that there's 3 franchises, and those routes are determined, pre-approved by the chief of police and the council. If they are in existence and have been, then they should be part of that ordinance, I would think. And I don't see it. I know the last council was using routes that they approved, but I don't, unless I'm reading the ordinance wrong, the number is controllable and the route's controllable. The route hasn't been pre-approved yet by either the chief of police or council before acting upon the application.
Did you get the chief of police's letter?
I got his concern letter, yes.
That's what I mean.
And see approval of the map route.
His initials are on the top right, marking off a segment. That's a different map. That's Southern Pride's map. I'd like to have that back, please.
Let me see it. E something high at 10, 13,
Yeah,
11.
see the
but
top
that
right
doesn't-
corner where it says on magnetic,
Says no EH.
right,
That's,
and then his initials.
so does that make this an approved route?
That's the only information I have from Chief Hyatt regarding the route, other than the letter.
Spence.
We've all received this letter of concern from Chief Hyatt, so we all know what his concerns are. Okay.
Mr. Dotson, you anything to say?
Oh, I got a whole bunch to say.
All right. Keep it short.
Okay. Okay, first off, folks, as you all know, your ordinance don't say what routes. It only says the chief of police signs off on the routes. And that is, if you don't have it, it is 4.28.06, changes of routes or rates. It's in that wording. The chief signed off on my route, took it to him, you got the map. The reason my route don't include Highway 23 or 62 is because the city has no control over the route as far as stopping, disembarking, loading, and unloading passengers. Now, if we're going to treat everybody the same, the gentleman over here says getting the cart before the horse again. I think the last council approved the exact sign off the chief signed. They didn't approve a route. You all don't have existing routes. But I would like to draw your attention to something on 444.04 and it's it's in. No person or business can own more than 2 franchises. This is where it gets interesting. No more than 2/3 exclusive routes allowable for horse-drawn carriages. Now, how I read that is the routes that you give to me, the other carriage company can't own more than 2/3 of them. Now, I can prove that he owns more than 2/3 of the routes that I asked here today by his 2 routes. His 2 routes equals more than what mine is. So, in essence, he can't do that. But I gave you my map. I followed your ordinance to the T, and I've done everything that your ordinance told me to do. I've been here before. The last time I was here, it was all the same as it is here. You all gave the other franchise to the other carriage company. If I'm denied here tonight, I will go after the other route that's in existence now, because that's what I applied for first. So if I don't get what I'm asking for tonight, and I'm hoping you will do that, I will go back and we will request that we get the other route that the other carriage company has got. And I think I can win that deal. I really do. All I'm asking you here today is I'm asking for a franchise. As you know, I don't have to have it for this street, but I'm asking good faith. I gave you the routes that I want. I've got, let me grab some photos here just a second. You got loading and unloading zones within the city, which means you can unload and you can unload and you can only be there for 15 minutes. Is that correct? You all know that you got loading zones up and down 23 here. I can use those as a carriage company. If someone calls me up, I can say, meet me at across the street from the city hall at the loading zone. I can pull up there. I can load that person in that loading zone because it's on a state highway. Now, if you say that I can't do that, it's been going on for years. Not only is my opponent in the loading zone, he's also in the fire zone. Time and time again. And all I want from you all is a franchise to operate my business. And these other streets that I'm out here that I asked for, I'll be glad to comply with your ordinance. And I think I'm in compliance with your ordinance. And there's no reason why this council should not approve my application as it is. Now, I know that the competition has been lobbying you folks very heavily, and I can understand that, and I appreciate that. But if your ordinance says, it's your law too, I got to obey your law, and so do you all. If it says in the ordinance, I've got to do it, you've got to do it. If I can comply with your ordinance, there is no reason you all should have any reason to vote me not to have the third franchise. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer anything you got to ask.
Mr. Leon.
Item 5, describe proposed routes, including points of departure, termination, boarding, and disembarking. And
say again.
Item 5, please describe proposed routes, including points of departure, termination, boarding, and disembarking.
Okay, I got a letter from the State Highway Department that says I can use their easements as long as I don't leave my equipment overnight. So what I'm planning on doing, any place that's from the curb to the telephone pole, the State Highway owns, on 62 and down here.
So you're not going to pick up anybody on any of the rest of your route, except on the State Highway?
Yes,
that's your
that will be the routes that I take my clients to and turn around and come back.
So you will only pick up on State highways?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Ballance.
When we look at 42805, about halfway through that paragraph, it says, a franchise shall be granted only upon the affirmative vote of a majority of the members elected to council. Each application shall be considered on its own merits and in light of the requirements for public safety. And we've had Chief Hyatt weigh in and say he didn't think.
What highway was that on, ma'am? 62?
It says each application shall be considered on its own merits and in light of requirements for public safety. Now, right here we have from our police chief that he told you that he didn't think Dairy Hollow Road from Clear Springs School to Pivot Rock Road was a safe route, as with Armstrong to Main Street, from Main Street to Judah Street. Now, right here we have in light of requirements for public safety, and we have a letter from the chief of police saying he doesn't think that's safe. Okay, and convenience and necessity of the city, its inhabitants and visitors. I'll jump off the limb right here and say perhaps we need to consider having a feasibility study.
Yeah, he didn't want to go up this year.
It's nowhere here does it say we must vote affirmatively. A franchise shall be granted only upon the affirmative vote of a majority of the members elected to council. It doesn't say we have to. It says we may, but it doesn't say we have to. Thank you.
I'm saying that the chief signed off on this, and I called the chief about the letter here. I got the same letter, and I asked the chief about that. I said, "What's the letter for, Mayor?" He said, "Well, I'm a little concerned on 62 highway." Well, I am too, but you know, folks, there's not a lot of great places in the Eureka Springs to drive a carriage. It's pretty up and down hill. So you forced me out of the other areas. You hadn't opened the whole city up to carriages. So you're forcing me to go on 62 highway. I've got areas up there. What street is Wall Street? Mm-hmm. That's a perfect place right there to go back to the lookout and turn around and come back. That's a perfect spot. I've been visiting with the folks next door there. I can park along 62 highway there on the side. I've unloaded my truck back here behind the lumberyard saloon. I've got permission from the lady back there to unload my truck, and there is no reason that I can't come around there and get on there and take folks on this route. There is nothing wrong with this route. The chief signed off on it. The only reason he gave a letter was because the other carriage company, and he told me, I said, what stemmed this letter? He said, Tom. Well, if you folks is going to let Tom dictate what this council is going to do, he's going to get you.
Excuse me.
Truly.
He's going to get
Point
you
of
in
order.
trouble.
Point of order.
Just a
Point of
minute.
order.
Just a minute.
Thank you.
Now, he's got a chance to speak. He can say what he wants to say. Now, if there's a question, address it through me, then I'll ask him. Yes, ma'am.
Our code says each application shall be considered on its own merits and in light of requirements for public safety. Right here in my hand, I hold a letter from the Chief of Police in the city dated October 27th, 2011, that says, I do not feel that it would be safe for him to operate the carriage on that highway due to the increased flow of traffic and needs, although he does say that he thinks that we can't regulate your business on the highway. I also told him, and this is a letter signed from the Chief of Police, I also told him I did not think that Dairy Hollow Road from Clear Spring School to Pivot Rock Road was a safe route, as with Armstrong from Main Street to Judah Street. Now, we have this gentleman standing here telling us that the police chief told him this, and the police chief told him that, when I'm holding a letter from the police chief right here in my hands.
Well, take that out. If you don't think it's safe from there to there, take it out. You can do that.
Miss Dix's house up to Pivot Rock Road.
Take that out. I'm going to load my carriages at Barbara Dix's place, and I'm going to go down to 23.
I still think we need a feasibility study.
What I'm saying is the chief signed off on this, and he wrote a letter on his concerns. And the concerns is me being on 62 because I put these routes off of 62 highway. And will I be on that a lot? No. My route's going to be on 23 probably 98% of the time. I mean, I don't understand if your ordinance asks me to do something and I do it, and then a feasibility study. If you do a feasibility study, do you know you're going to have to stop the other carriage company from running? You want him to miss the whole Christmas season? Because I guarantee you, if you do a feasibility study, that's going to be on the whole dang city. And we will file an injunction to keep any carriage business running in this city. If you want to do a feasibility study, that's a way to try to get out of something. Just read the ordinance, and I'm asking you all, you guys that's common sense here, pass this franchise.
Okay, wrap it up.
Thank you.
Mr. Raphael.
Well, first of all, I don't see how he can just come and make this map up. This map is ridiculous, first of all. And I would be in favor of him having the route on Wall Street. I would support that. Otherwise, I think we ought to have a workshop or something to discuss. Maybe we don't need to have 3 franchises anymore. Maybe we keep it at 2.
Try that one, man.
Yes, sir.
I'm not in favor of a feasibility study. I'm not in favor of reducing the franchises from 3 to 2. What I am in favor of is Mr. Dotson coming back to us with a complete...
I'm not coming back, DeVito.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I'm not coming.
Hold it down.
I'm not done here. You understand. You've served on city council. You understand that government...
Talk to me.
Okay. Mr. Dotson should understand, since he has served on city council in Springdale, that government works slowly. He said here tonight that he's willing to change his route.
Okay.
Now, I don't have a complete application from Mr. Dotson. All apologies that he's in a hurry and that we haven't done things the way he would like us to do it. But we're bound by our responsibilities to the ordinances and the laws of this city. And we're talking about the proposed routes, points of departure, termination, boarding, and disembarking. We're also talking about a changed route as per his comments not more than 5 minutes ago. So we've already changed the route. We don't have a complete application. I don't see any problems with delaying this until the next meeting where he meets all of the criteria set out by our ordinances.
Mr. Weaver, was it your opinion he met with all the ordinance?
I don't honestly know whether whether he has a complete application or not, because I've not seen the paperwork. Council voted that I was supposed to be given that paperwork, but I have not been given it prior to this meeting when it was submitted through the clerk. I would caution the council. It appears that there's inconsistency being presented to the table of whether or not Chief Hyatt has signed off on the route. and so that the council does probably need to clarify. Apparently, Mr. Dotson has said that the chief has signed his map, and it does appear that there is some kind of notation on the map, but he also said that he's willing to change that map. And then you have the letter that is dated apparently after the notation, addressing concerns. The concerns as to the highway are probably irrelevant. The concerns as to the other areas may need consistency, may need the council to be told a consistent answer directly from the chief.
Well, it is Earl Hight's signature on the map, so I can attest to that. I've seen it. Mr. Berry.
You know, actually, part of what this says is that pre-approved by the city council and the chief of police. I think it's up to us if we have issues with this, with the routes. We have a franchise, third franchise available. I think if we're unhappy, we need to voice where our concerns are. The note, I for one, it kind of goes along with the chief. I'm not comfortable with the Judah Street, Armstrong Judah. I mean, that's definitely a one-way street going up. That's doesn't seem to be a good street to me. If we have issues with any of the other maps that he has drawn on there, I think we should point those out. And if we have a concern with Benton Street or Judah Street or even Wall Street, even though you said that's a lot of people, whatever our concerns are, point